You threw me out for her. She whispered it like a question, like maybe he would take it back. He didn't. He laughed and slammed the door in her face. 5 years later, he turned on the TV and nearly collapsed because the woman he destroyed was now the one destroying everything he had left. It was 11:47 p.m. on a quiet, rainy Thursday night in Seattle. Not a violent storm, not thunder or lightning, just a steady, endless rain, falling like the sky didn't want to wake the sleeping city. Inside a warm house, under soft yellow light, Diana sat alone at the kitchen table. Papers were spread neatly in front of her. Bills, school notices, a grocery list written in careful handwriting. She was 35, the kind of woman people trusted instantly. Her dark hair was tied loosely, and she wore soft gray pajamas with a cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. Because the rain had made the night colder than usual, for 9 years, she had sat at this same table on the last Thursday of every month, balancing finances, keeping everything in order. She didn't complain. In fact, she liked it. Order made the world feel safe, predictable, under control. The front door opened. Footsteps echoed softly across the wooden floor. Without looking up, Diana smiled faintly. "You're late," she said gently. No answer, just the sound of the door closing. Slowly, she frowned and looked up. Richard stood in the doorway. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat, but it wasn't the rain that made her uneasy. It was him, something in the way he stood. Too stiff, too cold. "We need to talk," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was empty. Diana's hand stopped moving. She slowly placed the pen down. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside. And that's when she saw her. A younger woman stood in the hallway. Sharp features, glossy hair falling over a silk blouse. In her hand, a small overnight bag. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't embarrassed. She just looked around the house quietly, like she was evaluating it, like she was already imagining living there. Diana's stomach dropped. "Who is this?" she whispered. "This is Selene," Richard said calmly. "She's staying here now." For a moment, the words didn't make sense. Her mind tried to twist them into something normal. A relative, a guest, a misunderstanding. But then Selene stepped forward and placed her bag near the staircase. Not like a visitor, like someone who had arrived home. "I need you to leave tonight." The sentence landed like a physical "ou d'air." Diana let out a small, confused laugh. "Richard, what are you talking about?" No one smiled. No one corrected it. Richard walked past her, removed his coat, and placed it neatly on a chair. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," he said. "The house is in my name." The room suddenly felt too bright, too sharp. "We've been married for 9 years. And it's over." Just like that. Behind him, Selene slowly walked down the hallway, peeking into rooms, like she was choosing where things would go. When she reached the bedroom, she paused. "Is this the master bedroom?" she asked casually. "Yes," Richard replied. Diana felt something inside her stop. "Our children," she said, her voice trembling now. "They're asleep. They'll stay here." That was the moment everything changed. "You want me to leave without them?" Richard shrugged slightly. "If you want to see them again, it would be better not to cause a scene." That sentence filled the room like poison. Diana looked at the woman again. Selene now stood in the bedroom doorway, studying the space like it already belonged to her. And something inside Diana broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, because this house wasn't just his. 7 years ago, he had nothing. A struggling architect, dead, no clients. She had been the one with a future. 2 job offers in New York, a rising career. She gave it all up. For him, she supported him, helped him build his business, connected him with clients, rewrote his proposals late into the night. She poured her savings into his dream, and every time he succeeded, she stepped back because she believed in something simple. You build together, you win together. Now she stood in front of a man she didn't recognize. "You're serious," she whispered. He nodded once. "Pack what you need." The house fell silent, only the rain against the windows. Diana walked upstairs slowly. She stopped at her daughter's room. Lily slept peacefully under a blanket covered in tiny stars. Diana knelt beside the bed, brushed a strand of hair away, and kissed her gently. Lily didn't wake. In the next room, Theo lay sprawled across the bed, breathing deeply. Safe, unaware, Diana stood there longer than she should have, memorizing everything. Then she kissed his forehead too. Downstairs, she could hear quiet laughter. Selene's voice. In her house, in her life, Diana packed a small suitcase, a few clothes, a toothbrush, her notebook. That was all she could carry. When she closed the zipper, the sound echoed louder than it should have. She walked downstairs. Richard didn't look at her. Selene sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone. Like nothing had happened. Diana opened the front door. The rain hit her immediately. Cold, steady, unforgiving. She stepped outside, pulling the suitcase behind her. The door closed quietly. She sat in her car, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Minutes passed. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't break. She just breathed. Then she started the engine and drove away into the rain with one suitcase and a silence inside her that he would one day regret creating. Diana spent her first night in the driver's seat of her car. The rain had slowed to a thin mist, clinging to the windshield like a memory that refused to leave. The world outside was quiet, but inside her mind, nothing was quiet. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that moment again. The hallway, the suitcase, the woman standing in her life, like it had always been hers. The humiliation burned slowly, but beneath it, something else was forming. Not loud, not emotional, cold, steady, controlled. When the sky began to lighten with the gray of early morning, Deanna finally sat up. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror. For a second, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because something inside her had shifted. The life she had was gone, but she was, and that mattered. She reached for her phone, scrolled through her contacts, stopped at one name, Rose, her older sister. She pressed call. Diana. Rose's voice was thick with sleep. Diana opened her mouth, but the words didn't come out at first. Then finally, I need help. 40 minutes later, Rose was there. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She just opened her arms, and Diana stepped into them, like she had been holding her breath all night. Rose lived in a small townhouse outside the city. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, quiet, safe. Diana moved into the spare bedroom that same morning. For the first few days, she barely spoke. She slept. She stared. She moved slowly, like someone learning how to exist again. Rose didn't push. She didn't ask. She just left food on the table, tea on the counter, and stayed close enough to be there, without forcing anything. By the end of the first week, something changed. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed. It stopped being a storm and became fuel. One evening, Diana sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, the same one she had taken from the house. The pages were blank, but her mind was. At the top of the page, she wrote one word: plan. Rose watched her quietly. You're not writing about him, she said. Diana shook her head. He doesn't get that much of my life. And she meant it, because for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about supporting someone else's dream. She was thinking about her own. She started writing everything she knew: markets, business strategies, mistakes she had seen companies make, gaps between good products and poor communication. For years, she had been solving these problems quietly for someone else. Now, she was going to do it for herself. 3 weeks later, she made a call. An old colleague, George. They met at a small coffee shop. The air smelled like roasted beans and wet pavement. George listened carefully as Diana explained her idea. A consulting firm helping struggling companies fix their strategy, rebuild their identity, grow. When she finished, he leaned forward slightly. You've been sitting on this brain for years. Deanna gave a small smile. I was busy building someone else's life. George nodded. Then maybe it's time you build your own. They shook hands. And that handshake was the beginning of everything. But success didn't come easy. 2 months later, Diana sat in a courtroom, listening as Richard's lawyer spoke. She voluntarily left the home. She is unemployed. She has no stable residence. Every word felt like a knife, carefully chosen, precisely delivered, designed to erase her. Diana sat still, hands folded, silent. She wanted to scream, to tell the truth, to explain everything. But the courtroom didn't care about emotion, only evidence. The decision came quickly. Temporary custody granted to Richard. Diana walked out into the sunlight, but it didn't feel warm. It felt empty. She sat on a bench, staring at nothing for a long time. Then slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook. If she couldn't win today, she would build something strong enough to win tomorrow. And that's exactly what she did. Her first client was small, a struggling startup. Great product, terrible positioning. No one understood what they were selling. Diana studied everything: the market, the messaging, the structure. She rewrote their entire strategy, rebuilt how they presented themselves, changed how they sold. 4 months later, their revenue tripled. Word spread. Quietly, another client came, then another, then another. Diana worked late nights, long hours, no complaints. Every deal was a step away from the woman who sat in a car with nothing. At the same time, she fought for her children. Every hearing, every visit, every document. She showed up every time. She never spoke badly about Richard. Not once. She just proved who she was through actions, consistency, presence. Months turned into years. The company grew. What started as consulting became something bigger. They began investing, then acquiring. Diana had a rare ability. She could walk into a failing business and see its future. George handled numbers, deals, structures. Diana rebuilt everything else: teams, strategy, direction. Their first acquisition tripled in revenue. The second exploded. By year 3, they owned multiple companies across different industries. One night, George leaned back and said, "You realize we're building something huge." Diana closed her notebook. "He didn't erase me," she said quietly. "He set me free." And somewhere across the city, Richard had no idea that the woman he threw into the rain was becoming something unstoppable. 5 years later, the rain in Seattle no longer reminded Diana of pain. It reminded her of movement, of beginnings, of the night everything changed. On the 32nd floor of a glass tower, Diana stood at the end of a long conference table. Executives watched her closely, waiting, listening. She didn't use slides. She didn't need them. Every number, every projection, every decision was already in her head. She spoke calmly, precisely, explaining how a failing healthcare network could dominate its market, how they were losing millions, and how to fix it. When she finished, no one spoke for a moment. Then the CEO leaned forward. "Where have you been hiding?" Diana gave a small smile. "I wasn't hiding," she said. "I was building." That deal became one of the largest her company had ever signed. But it was only one step, because what she built was no longer just a company. It was a system. They didn't just advise businesses anymore. They bought them, rebuilt them, scaled them. By the 5th year, her holding group had crossed a valuation of over $100 million. Then more, then much more. But through all of it, she never forgot her children. Every visit, every school event, every moment she was allowed, she showed up. No drama, no bitterness, no anger, just presence, consistency, love, and eventually, that mattered. The court saw it. The decision changed. Shared custody, then more time. The day her children moved into her home, Diana didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't need to, because that was the victory that mattered. "Mom, are we rich now?" her daughter asked one day. Diana smiled softly. "We're free," she said. "That's better." Across the city, Richard's life was falling apart. His business began to crack. Projects failed. Clients left. Deadlines slipped. At first, he blamed the market. Bad timing. Unlucky circumstances. But deep down, he knew the truth. For years, Diana had been the one holding everything together. And without her, everything slowly collapsed. Selene noticed it too. The confidence, the success, the lifestyle she expected was fading. One morning, she left. No warning, no explanation, just a short note. "This isn't what I signed up for." And just like that, he lost her too. The house became quiet, empty. Richard sat on the couch one Sunday afternoon, a glass in his hand, the TV playing in the background. He wasn't really watching, just trying not to think, until something caught his attention. One of the largest private acquisitions this year. He frowned slightly, still not fully focused. Valued at approximately $1.4 billion. His eyes moved to the screen. The camera showed a glass building. Reporters, flashing lights. Then, a woman stepped forward. Confident, calm, controlled. Richard froze. The glass slipped slightly in his hand, because the woman standing at that podium was Diana. Not the woman he remembered, not the quiet wife at the kitchen table. This was someone else, stronger, sharper, untouchable. The deal was led by Diana Mercer, the reporter said, founder and CEO of Mercer Strategic Group. Richard stared at the screen. It didn't make sense. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to fail, to struggle, to need him. But instead, she had built something bigger than anything he ever created. A journalist asked, "How did it all begin?" Diana paused for a moment. A faint smile appeared. "Sometimes," she said calmly, "when your life changes unexpectedly, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. The real question is whether that moment breaks you or teaches you." Richard leaned back slowly. The room felt smaller, heavier. Then a thought entered his mind. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe she would forgive him. She always used to. 30 minutes later, he was driving downtown, standing in the lobby of her company. "I'm here to see Diana Mercer," he said. "No appointment," the receptionist asked. "Just tell her Richard is here." Minutes passed. "Then she'll see you." The elevator ride felt longer than it should. When the doors opened, everything was calm, controlled, powerful. This was her world now, and he didn't belong in it. He was led into a conference room. Diana was already there, not alone. A lawyer, George, two silent figures standing near the wall. "Sit down, Richard." Her voice was calm. No anger, no emotion. He smiled nervously. "You look incredible. I saw you on TV, and I know why you're here," she said. The smile faded. "You saw the news. Selene left. Your business is failing." Silence. "Diana, I made mistakes." She raised her hand slightly, stopping him. "I'm not angry at you." He blinked. "You're not." She shook her head. "I stopped being angry a long time ago." Then she slid a document across the table. "I hired a forensic accountant." His chest tightened. "For the last 2 years of our marriage." She continued calmly. "You transferred money from our joint account. Another paper. You paid for Selene's apartment while we were still married. Another. Financial discrepancies in your business." His face went pale. "Why are you telling me this?" he whispered. Diana closed the folder. "Because 8 months ago," she said quietly, "my legal team reported everything." Silence. "You reported me," he said. "I reported the evidence." Then she gestured slightly behind him. "The people standing behind you," she said, "are not my employees." Richard turned slowly. "Badges?" "Richard Hale," one of them said calmly. "We have a warrant for your arrest." The words hit like thunder. "This doesn't have to happen," he said desperately. Diana stood up, calm, untouchable. "The warrant was issued 4 days ago," she said. "Today was just convenient." Handcuffs clicked, and just like that, it was over. As he was led away, no one stopped working. No one reacted, because in her world, he no longer mattered. Months later, Diana sat in a school auditorium. No cameras, no reporters, just her children. Her daughter ran into her arms. Mom, did you see me? Deanna smiled. I saw everything. Her son took her hand quietly, and for a moment, nothing else existed. No past, no revenge, no pain, just peace, because the greatest victory was never destroying him. It was building a life where she never had to look back.